Hi everyone and welcome to my review of Takahata's The Tale of Princess Kaguya in 2013. So yes, here we are, another Takahata review of course. Really been looking forward to rewatching this and reviewing it. And of course, another Studio Ghibli work. Here's the Blu-ray of course, spine number 21 on the collection. And yes, this is the final film from Takahata. His farewell to cinema. So, you know, really sad stuff of course, but wow. This film, now of course, wonderfully, renowned for its art style and everything, of course. Very acclaimed work here. Rotten Tomatoes, 100%. And this is cited as one of the best animated films of all time. Of course, it's his final film. It's the same year, of course, as Miyazaki released Wind Rises. So that's kind of interesting. The two films, we believed, of course, that Miyazaki would be his final film, but of course he's doing more stuff. But yes, this film, the final work from Takahata. Of course, I have seen Grave of the Fireflies, and of course, only yesterday, and yes, reviewed them. This film, I've been really looking to rewatching this. As I've said before, these three films now, are very close for me. Which one I prefer? These three, they are so wonderful in their own ways. Now this film, once again, no question for me. Personally, one of the greatest films ever made. This film is just extraordinary. This is, a masterpiece in every sense. We'll get that out of the way. It basically, it's based on a very old kind of legend. And of course, this bamboo cutter stumbles across, this glowing stalk. Within this, of course, basically this princess is there, very small. And then basically she changed into, a baby, and him and his wife, basically take her in, as a kid. And of course, the catch is she grows very quickly at a rapid rate. And then of course, she basically, this whole thing surrounding her destiny and becoming a princess. And of course, yes, basically after, the first act, she kind of goes to the city where she's kind of, of course, the bamboo cutter gets gold and, basically wants her to become a princess. So he buys his way into all this, and she tries to get, of course, taught how to be a princess, how to act, the customs and everything, and all the attitudes. Yes, and of course, the bamboo cutter, basically he tries to do this, because he thinks it'll make her happy. But yeah, and of course, it's not always it seems, and the rest of the film is just, wow, what a piece of vision this is. This is something else. Of course, Princess Kaguya, as she's eventually named, the princess, this character, this protagonist, as well, it's very interesting to see. She's kind of like a superhero, she really is. Of course, and so much complexities in this, and it's just, for me, one of the most wonderful, unique films I've ever seen. But yes, of course, this protagonist is just one of the best for me in anime, definitely one of the best. What a brilliant character. Of course, Takahata once again co-writing the film. And all the characters in this film are just so great. This has got a lot of complex themes that are actually certainly not in a lot of anime films. It's not something I would say. I usually say, a lot of them are simple on the surface and stuff, and simple themes. This one, yes, it has got themes of family and stuff, love, but it has got a lot of complex themes. That definitely probably wouldn't pick up on as a kid, but yes, it is very dark at times. That's a difference, of course. The ending, and we'll do some spoilers in this. I'll put that in the description. If you've not seen the film, go and watch it, and then of course come back to this. I'll put that in the description. But yes, of course, the tragic ending as well. It's just the way that none of the anime films have ever ended. I don't feel. The Grave of the Fireflies, of course, very dark ending and stuff. But for me, it was a lot more hopeful and stuff, and still very kind of just in a way uplifting as well as sad. This is shattering. This ending, it's something that I've never seen in an animated film actually. Full stop. Takahata is not afraid to kind of, and he's a filmmaker in general. He does not stray from going, doing very risky things. Only yesterday as well, actually. Some very risky elements in there, but they paid off wonderfully. And as I say, just this is very dark and complex, but it's just so uplifting as well. It's so pure. There's not a single moment in the narrative where there's anything that hinders my connection to the film. And it's just, well, of course it is. It's kind of it's her struggle at times, and how she's very unhappy, especially in the middle segment of the film. But again, it's so I related so much to the character, and of course the warmth in the film. It's always constant. It never feels depressing or kind of hard to watch or anything like that. It's so wonderful. I was always invested for every second in the narrative, and of course the animation, hand drawn here. This is art. This is something that just really it's some of the best things. Paintings really that I've ever seen. It's just wonderful imagery. This is just wonderful cinema. The animation is some of the greatest I've ever seen. It's a contender for the greatest, Takahata visuals. Although only yesterday, I think, probably is for me the perfect blend. It's probably my favourite, and it has a bit more nostalgia in there in the actual visuals themselves. And this, of course, Takahata was wanting to do something that was, nothing really realistic, and I love this. This is a fantasy film, and this is the way to do it. It actually reminds me a lot of the traditional, Snow White and stuff, Bambi. The way this is more, it's not, lesser at all. It's not more, less depth or anything, but it's just more pure. In many ways, more simple. But I think actually for fantasy, as I said before, this works better for me, and it's a wonderful art style that is so kind of it has so much relatability in it, but it is of course a fantasy work, and in the way of course the blend of reality and fantasy that's in this film throughout the whole film, it's just something else. It's something where this world building, is just so genius. Now of course after this rewatch, I'm stumped. I think these three films, Grave of the Fireflies, this, and of course only yesterday, very, very, very close. All three of them are in my top 150. That is how much, Takahata has just wowed me with these three films. He didn't make too many films, of course, feature films, but these are the ones that, that most people talk about, and this one just, once again, is so different, but in its own way, so wonderful, and just this whole narrative, it starts off, of course, just some of the most purest, stuff in cinema. This explores, of course, childhood and just the joys of childhood. And then, of course, she grows up so quickly compared to her friends. Of course, she makes friends. Sutamaru, he's one of the main characters. Of course, she basically, she forms a romance over the course of the film with him, and basically, they're all friends, and it's just the way it kind of captures childhood, and of course, just the joys of life, even the bits where the woodcutter and his wife, of course, basically tend to a princess, basically when they're looking after her as she's a kid. This is so pure, it's so human. It's just wonderful to see. Even that brought me to tears actually. It's just not in a sad way, but just kind of an uplifting way, and just how emotional it is, how pure this is, just a human film. Takahata, just the warmth and the heart in this film, and then of course the joys of childhood, and then of course the tragedy of moving away, and of course things, expectations taking over what you actually want, and of course the rest of the film is, as I say, kind of exploration of happiness, and how our princess, of course, Princess Kaguya, is very, very unhappy because of what is expected of her, and of course, basically the father, as I say, keeps of course the woodcutter, keeps wanting to make her kind of a noble princess, and basically it kind of as a criticism of kind of social classes and stuff, and all this kind of and actual the act of a princess, and what is expected of her, and stuff, and it's just so wonderfully done. There is humour in there as well, but it's just so powerful how she's she's expected to do certain things, and she's constantly unhappy, and then of course she does return to the kind of the countryside where she kind of grew up, and all these moments just wonderfully portrayed. This is perfect stuff. I love in films when it shows stuff at the beginning, and there's quite a long time before a character returns, and it kind of just this nostalgic element to it, and this film certainly does that. How things have changed over a certain amount of years, but all these memories and these emotions are still there. So powerful, and it just that is in the space of just 2 hours, just over that. This film has such a scope. It feels like an epic. It It feels grand, majestic, you know, and it's so beautifully drawn and portrayed in every emotion. This is an absolute flawless masterpiece of cinema. You know, there's not a single flaw for me. The music by Joe Hisaishi, again, very, very different, you know, but definitely wonderful. You know, this is a very, very subtle at times, the music. The second half, especially the flying sequence, oh, wow, that was something else. You know, it's more kind of grand and you know, outgoing and big, which, you know, is just the flying sequence, you know, and you can compare it to only yesterday. You know, once again, creating one of the most kind of uplifting moments in cinema. Takahata, you know, just wow, this was a moment again that brought me to tears. Possibly, you know, one of my favourite moments of the film, and you know, I probably would say that the first sort of 40 minutes of the film consistently is my favourite. But then again, just as much really as the kind of the last half an hour of the film, 40 minutes. You know, it's all perfect. But you know, the beginning and the end acts are my favourites, just in terms of emotion, in terms of, you know, kind of satisfaction, and you know, how it moves me. But yes, of course, I love the sense of kind of delayed gratification. But then again, you know, the way it ends, of course, you know, it doesn't all pan out at all how you'd want it to end. You know, it's a very, very tragic ending. But then again, you know, the last kind of couple of shots, which is very, you know, kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, are very, very kind of yes, they're ambiguous and stuff, but I got quite a lot of comfort from that. You know, the last kind of images, it was really something else, this experience. You know, it's such a complex film, but one that very, very pure and kind of simple emotions that kind of just instantly, when I first watched it, I got from the film. This just comes together in every way to make statements, but just to kind of you know, move me, and it's something that I can find great, great comfort in the film, especially early on, and of course this whole connection, you know, this character Sutamaru, you know, this kind of love story, you know, it's not too prominent in the film in terms of length, but it's just so powerful, you know, and it's just all these moments. And then of course you've got, you know, the kind of what it kind of says very, very smartly, geniusly, you know, about society and expectations, social classes, you know, and then of course just the tragedy and of course the fantasy work that it is, in every sense. This is just, you know, it's a film that's full of wonder, and it's an absolute masterpiece, for me. One of the greatest films in the history of cinema. So of course, this film absolutely gets full marks, you know, and of course, yes, it gets a plus. It gets into my plus tiers of 100%, and yeah, you know, of course, as I've said, this is my top 150. You know, I think once again, you know, it's really, really stumped me. It's kind of like over the years, maybe not quite as hard, but you know, it's kind of like the Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas comparison. These three films actually, very, very close. You know, between the three of them, you know, kind of thing, and in their own ways, very, very wonderful. You know, there's maybe things certainly I like more about Only Yesterday. I think certainly, you know, the highs of Only Yesterday, I would say, is my favourite. You know, segments of the three films here. Grave of the Fireflies is probably the most consistently, you know, just emotionally the most consistent, I think, although all three are perfect, of course. And then this one, you know, it's kind of the most fantastical and kind of, you know, just the one maybe full of wonder the most, actually, and just the kind of beguiling work that kind of just makes me think, you know, so much about certain ambiguous moments, and, you know, just the kind of the animation and stuff is so unique. There's things I prefer about all three of them, you know, and stuff. And actually, yeah, you know, Grave of the Fireflies, the kind of the relationship between, of course, the brother and sister. That could be, you know, certainly the relationship that is the most powerful of the three films. You know, so there's you know, there's kind of things, you know, they kind of do more than each other. But for me, all three are perfect. And this film, of course, as it's in my top 150, it gets 100% plus. Tier 2, the exact same rating as the other two Takahatas I've seen. This film, if you've not seen it, you know, and you're skipping to the end after this, you know, kind of score and stuff, you have to see the film. This is one of the grandest, most poetic, kind of tragic, but you know, uplifting and just pure films I've ever seen. The animation, certainly Takahata pulled it off. You know, I think what he was going for here definitely worked in every sense. You know, this is something that quite risky. You know, quite a lot. You know, People do this sometimes; it doesn't quite work. The animation in this, you know, the way it's done, the art style is absolutely beautiful. It adds to the fantasy element, the sense of wonder. Going back to a more simplistic kind of leaving, you know, certain things to the imagination. The way, you know, certain places, you know, you're seen in the distance are not quite kind of moving and stuff and alive. You know, just adds to the sense of wonder. And of course, every frame of this, you know, it's just beautiful to look at. But it's just so full of, as I say, full of wonder, full of kind of emotion. All these characters in the film, the kind of the narrative, it's just perfect. Kaguya, Princess Kaguya is a character that's one of the best in anime, and of course, the relationship, the warmth between the characters, especially, you know, and this kind of this unique, certainly unique. That's all this film is, you know, family kind of portrayal. You know, this theme of family. It's just so wonderful. The sense of friendship in the film, and of course, the way it explores childhood, the nostalgic element to the film, and then of course, what it says. You know, with different themes, complexities. It's just also perfectly portrayed. You know, the kind of the tragedy of the last act of the film, but then moments before the final sort of 10 minutes or so, the uplifting moments that just, you know, the flying sequence just elevates me, you know, to such heights, you know, and of course, it's just a perfect film for me. The music, of course, just everything in the film, absolutely wonderful. You know, this is truly, you know, some farewell from Takahata, and very, very sad, of course, you know, but this is something that, you know, that just means so much to me, and thank you Takahata for once again creating an absolute masterpiece. Not a single doubt to it being a masterpiece in every sense. You know, the way it's written, the way it's drawn, the music, just how this kind of speaks to me, and how consistently just wonderful this film is. You know, it's something else. And yes, of course, reviewed. This is a film that I cannot recommend more. You know, this is in my top 150 films, as I say, and I don't really need to decide now. But these three films, very, very close. Only yesterday, Grave of the Fireflies, and this, you know, in quality and just in the way they kind of speak to me. They're also emotional and pure and human, and just, you know, epic in their own ways, nostalgic. This is, you know, a wonderful director, Takahata, that, you know, certainly didn't make as much films as, you know, Miyazaki, but again, just a wonderful director, filmmaker, and artist. So yes, of course, we'll be back with, you know, more kind of anime / animation in general, you know, reviews over the next, you know, week, hopefully. Possibly watching Snow White soon, rewatching that. Cannot wait for that. Yeah, maybe, you know, Whisper of the Heart as well, and possibly The Wind Rises quite soon. I'll probably leave Spirited Away, you know, maybe a month or so. You know, kind of save for me the best till last, or you know, one of the last ones, at least for, you know, kind of a while and stuff. But yes, of course, I will be buying more, you know, anime Blu-rays and stuff. So yes, thanks for watching my review.